It's like you into my house.
Okay.
Hi guys, thank you everybody here. Thank you all for coming. Welcome to our Can You Hear Me out it. All right, well, I'm pretty good at projecting. So we're just going to go through brief introductions, and we're going to have a 5 to 10 minute Q&A session with everybody in the crowd. And so first, we have Miss Lydia DePhyllis. She covers the economics of everything in Texas. Previously, she was a business reporter at Washington Post, a tech reporter at the New Republic, and a real estate reporter at the Washington City Paper. And then we have Professor Christian Collins, and he has a wide range of experience in politics, having worked for Greg Abbott's governor campaign, Ted Cruz's presidential campaign, and now working full-time as Congressman Kevin Brady's campaign manager, while teaching communications at Lone Star since 2014. And then we have Dr. Reynaldo Guerro. Dr. Guerro is on the board of League of Women Voters in Houston. He's the candidate Recruitment and Development Chair for the Latino Texas PAC. He has served as on the advisory board of Mayor Anise Parker, Sheriff Adrian Garcia, and is now the Civic Engagement Chair for Mayor Sylvester Turner's Hispanic Advisory Board. And then we wanted Congressman McCaul to introduce himself and talk about a couple of the things that he's working on right now.
Well, thanks for inviting me, and it's good to see young students interested in politics and issues of the day. I know all of you are honor students. I'm the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, so I deal with a lot of issues regarding threats facing the nation. Is it not working? Yeah, I can project. And there are quite a few. I mean, I think, as recently, the airstrike in Syria, I think, was an interesting development. Of course, you have ISIS there. We have a civil war conflict. Assad is a magnet for the jihadists. And we need a resolution, I think, of the civil war. We're going to continue to have both the threat of ISIS and the refugee crisis going on. Cybersecurity, I could go on for 15 minutes. Big part of my portfolio, including, in addition to the border and the security that we're going to provide through a border supplemental bill coming up in May. Finally, I also chair the Childhood Cancer Caucus. I thought it was important to take on the #1 killer of our children. And we passed several bills in the Congress, one which led to the development of a drug for neuroblastoma, which is saving a lot of kids' lives right now. And that's probably one of the more gratifying things I've probably done as a member. But it's great to be in Tomball, and I think with that, I think we want to have more of an exchange. So I've got about, how much time do I have? So I've got about 15 minutes for Q&A. And again, I just want to congratulate you for being interested in the issues of the day. Public service is difficult, but I think it's a very noble profession. And it's something that the sacrifice that you make is worth it at the end of the day. My dad was a bombardier in a B-17 in World War II and kind of inspired me to serve my country in my way. And I think service to your country is very a noble aspiration. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over for any questions. Yes, sir.
In your role as chair of the Homeland Security Committee, would you support an independent investigation of any ties between the Trump campaign and Russia?
That's a great question. And that's kind of one of the debates going on right now. We have a House intelligence investigation, which I know has been called into question. Chairman Nunes had to recuse himself. I think it's distracted from the objectivity of that investigation, quite frankly. And there's a Senate investigation. The FBI is really going to be, they're doing the investigation. I think at the end of the day is going to be what we're going to be really paying attention to. And Director Comey has testified that he has an active investigation into any potential ties between the Trump campaign and the Russian hacking. I will tell you this, I have had the classified briefings on the Russian hacks that took place. There's no question in my mind that they were attempting to influence the last presidential election. I think they were more geared not so much in favor of Trump, but their dislike of Hillary at the end of the day. But I often say I don't care if it's Republican or Democrat. An attack like that is an attack on our democracy. It's an American issue. And I think all Americans should be concerned about that. The Russians have historically tried to interfere in our elections. They just have a new tool that they can use. It's a very effective one, and that's a cyber piece. They are actively now trying to influence the elections in Germany and France, as you probably know, and are very involved in destructive attacks in Estonia and the Ukraine. So Russia's very much on the radar these days. Yes, sir.
What can students do? Sorry. What can students do to actively participate in the political process, such as campaigning or just more than voting?
Well, yeah, and you'd be surprised when people don't vote. So if you're voting, that you're already ahead of the curve. But I think, it's a passion. It's a calling. I actually was very fortunate that, given my background as a federal prosecutor, counterterrorism, I was able to play a role in the Congress that really, I think I can do the best job because it's my passion to protect Americans from terrorist attacks. But I would say to get involved with, whether it's a state, city or state, or a federal elected official. Campaigns are kind of interesting. I know y'all been through a few of those. But also the offices themselves working on the policy. There's a politics and the policy, and sometimes they work well together, and sometimes they're not. But I would say to get active in the process. And there are a lot of activists that champion an issue, whatever's important to you. Support a candidate who you identify with, whether it be my side of the aisle or the other side. And we're always looking for talented, students to hire. Yeah.
I was curious about what your stance was on the American Health Care Act and on healthcare reform in general.
Well, I think we have to reform it. I think if left to its own devices, the Obamacare will implode, and I think Americans are going to get hurt in the process. I think you're going to see in the next month the premiums are going to start going up even more. And I think the question is, how are we going to change this? We want to make it so premiums go down, deductibles go down, we make it more affordable, accessible, and better quality care, and give more choices to the American people. I think right now there aren't a whole lot of choices on the exchange. There's not a whole lot of competition going on, so that drives up the cost. So that's a big debate going on right now: is how are we going to reform Obamacare and deal with that issue? As you know, we had a bill that was very. It doesn't happen very often, but a bill actually went to the floor and was debated on and then pulled. I've been up. This is my 7th term in Congress, and I've seen them pull before they go to the floor, but never after they've gone to the floor. It was a very dramatic day, deflating in many respects because we want to get something done up there. And, but I think you're going. I hope we're going to see a better bill come out of the process that we'll be able to rally behind.
All right, so while we have you, we have some of this works really well, some of the pre-submitted questions that we wanted to address with you.
One of the biggest concerns we received was about the border wall, which I'm sure you've heard plenty about. And so we'd like to open this up to our panelists as well. And so first off, what do you think the border wall would be effective? Do you support it?
I support securing the border, and I'm working with the administration. And the question is, the wall I see as a sort of symbolic. So conceptually, what is the wall going to look like? And then how much is it going to cost, and who's going to pay for it is the bottom line. I think there will be physical infrastructure. There's fencing, concrete levee systems. But I think the important piece that I don't want the administration to lose sight of is the technology piece down there. This has to be integrated with technology in a smart, effective way with also aviation assets so we can see it. Right now, I always say we need 100% visibility to see the threats, because right now we can't see the threats and where they're coming from. And then we need the personnel to respond, and then the intelligence to see what's happening on the other side, so the human and drug traffickers and drug cartels and potential terrorists can't come into the United States. And so Senator Cornyn and I are working on a bill, a border interior enforcement bill, and you will see a border supplemental bill to start paying for this. It will not be paid by Mexico in the near future, but they would get creative at some point on that. So.
And that actually goes into like one of the follow-up questions for this. So if this wall would be built, what role do you believe that Texas would be playing in this construction, and how will it in fact impact Texans in terms of financial and property consequences?
Great question, because Texas, we have a different border. We have a river, we have property owners. I think Texans see it differently. We have 1,200 miles of this 2,000-mile border, so we have more border than any other state, and I think Texans see it a little differently. I don't think a 30-foot concrete wall is really going to be the answer to that, and it doesn't structurally, how do you do that when you got a river? So I think fencing in highly populated areas works, but then in between that, that's where you need the technology integrated in the aviation assets. I brought back from Afghanistan these aerostats. So it's a DOD, DHS transfer, and now we got 10 aerostats down there. But that's kind of stuff that we need, I think more of. But Texans will play a big role in this. And we're not going to write a blank check. And, me working with the appropriators are going to basically put conditions on this appropriations that better define how this thing is accomplished.
And we wanted to get some of the panel's perspective on this as well, to facilitate the discussion between y'all.
I'd love to keep the focus on Congressman while he's here, and if I could follow up with my own question, how much money do you think would be appropriate to devote to the wall and border reform?
Well, this is the thing too, from a taxpayer standpoint. A 30-foot concrete wall will cost $20 million a mile. And we can buy 2 Predators for that price tag. So we're looking at what's the best value for the taxpayer, what's the most effective way to get this done. The initial border supplemental bill we think will be roughly about $1.5 billion. Senator Cornyn and I have the border interior enforcement bill we'd like to attach to that. And then in the next cycle, appropriation cycle, we will, that's when I think you'll see a larger appropriation done at that point. I think right now we're trying to just jumpstart the process, get it going. But the estimates are anywhere between 10 to 15 billion. And if you factor in and that's just for the border itself. You also have to have judges, prosecutors, detention beds. There are a lot of other factors that weigh in that will cost money. And so when you look at the ultimate price tag, it could be as high as $20 billion. And the question that you're probably going to ask me is, where do you get that money? And it's a good question. And it's a question I asked the administration and the appropriate. We'll probably have to do an emergency, like we have emergency wartime spending. This would be an emergency supplemental bill.
So first I'd like to say congratulations for being here. Ray Guerra, I'm an engineer during the day working in oil and gas. I'm also on the board of the League of Women Voters. And so I'm always very excited to see students participating civically. Personally, my dad is from Rio Grande City. He's an American citizen. He's an Air Force veteran. My mom is, her family were immigrants. They were migrant farm workers. So I'm personally tied. Not only does the League of Women Voters have a stance on this issue, but I'm also personally tied to this. So I believe the question was, is something to the effect of, will the wall be effective? And I think the question is, effective at what? I think all statistics show that putting up a wall does not deter or stop immigrants from coming over. Besides the fact that immigration has slowed almost to a halt now, currently a wall doesn't stop people from coming over. So if from effectiveness from that point of view, I don't believe that we can call it effective. If we want to talk about, actually I always tell people what's the quickest way to deport not 11 million immigrants, but a large percentage of those immigrants, is to actually tear down that wall. So it turns out that a wall doesn't keep immigrants from coming into the U.S., but what it does is it keeps them here. So immigrants come here, and typically they'll come here and they'll work seasonal jobs, but then they're just as patriotic about their home country as we are about being Americans. So they're not wanting to leave their country. They're coming over here to work seasonal jobs and they want to go back. So when you put up a wall, it doesn't stop them from coming over. What it does, it stops them from going back and visiting their family, so they end up bringing their family back. So if we want to talk about being effective in terms of keeping immigrants from coming to the U.S., it doesn't keep them from coming over to the U.S., and it also makes them stay here. And the other thing is, again, I'm an engineer, and so very focused in the business side of things. And it turns out there's a whole lot of businesses that are opposing this wall because it turns out that there's a logjam at the border now, and it's costing the U.S. economically millions of dollars per minute, actually. So it's not effective from a fiscal point of view. It's not effective from keeping immigrants from coming, and it's keeping immigrants here. So I think the key term there is effective.
We just want one more question before you head out, and then we'll shift the conversation to talk about some of the this in more depth and open it up more to the panelists. But before you go, it was brought to our attention. Students were wondering how you feel about President Trump's proposed budget, specifically how it defunds programs like Meals on Wheels and several educational programs while increasing funds for the military.
Well, the Congress is the independent legislative body that decides that, on the appropriations. So we are looking at the budget as a starting place, but it's certainly not going to be what it's going to look like at the end. So we were looking at all these proposed budget cuts, and I do support the increased spending to upgrade our military. I think it's been degraded over the last 8 years to the point where it's like pre-World War II levels, which I think makes it dangerous for Americans. The number one responsibility under the Constitution is to provide for a common defense. And whether it be our intelligence community, our homeland security apparatus, or our military, I think to me that's, if you don't have the security piece, you don't have anything. And so I think we live in dangerous times, as I mentioned at the outset. And there are many threats, not just from ISIS and Al-Qaeda, what they're trying to do in the aviation sector, blowing up airplanes as always, but to Iran, to North Korea, where they're shooting ballistic missiles, to, quite frankly, Russia. And Mr. Putin's not our friend, and they've exercised a lot of aggression over the last 8 years. Reagan, who first guy I got to vote for, talked about, peace through strength. I think that's part of what we're trying to do here, project strength as well. And then going back to my dad's generation, Churchill talked about weakness invites aggression. I think we've seen a lot of aggression over the last 8 years in a negative way that's impacted our safety. And so, I think you're going to see a lot of members support that. But we're also, one piece to mention as well is the infrastructure bill. And we're going to have a major infrastructure bill to rebuild bridges, roads, highways, rail system, very antiquated all throughout the United States. So these things are crumbling. And we need to rebuild this nation here at home as well. So.
Chairman McCaul, thank you so much for your service to our country, military service, and now as Chairman of Homeland Security, you're doing a great job. My question, maybe just will be a layup for you, but why is it important to secure our borders? And what are some of the implications of not securing our borders? And I think it'd be important for some of the students to hear that here, because as someone that started out at LoneStar College, Kingwood, I went there 2 years and then went on to the University of Texas and got a graduate degree. And this is the most formidable years of your lives. This is where you determine who you are. And so it's such a great opportunity to be able to be with you all as you're shaping your own perspectives and understandings of the world. This is where you shape your worldview. And I think it's important to hear from a congressman why this is important that we secure our borders and what are the implications of not securing our border.
Right, and I try to make this as less contentious as possible, but I think it's important to secure the sovereignty of the United States. I will tell you, when I get the threat briefings, I get them, weekly, and they brief me on the threats south, and I took the speaker down to the Rio Grande Valley sector. We got an intelligence briefing, and there's some pretty bad actors right across there. The human traffickers that come through here, the drug traffickers, bring in, narcotics to potential terrorists. There are a lot of special interest aliens that we pick up at the border that concern me. And when you read the ISIS playbook, they talk about, in their own words, the idea of bringing a nuclear device into the hemisphere and across the U.S.-Mexico border. When I get that kind of briefing, I think about the safety of Americans. And if we don't have a secure border, all that comes in. And I would argue a lot of it's coming in now. We have not been able to stop it. We can't control the immigration policy, with this. And to your point, the first thing, the wall, again, it's going to be, the technology is what's important here. And I've been down there many times, and it's very, they're bringing in violence and drugs and potential terrorists. And I think that is a pretty compelling case as to why we need to get this done. And, I see these threats coming into the Western Hemisphere, as well, and there's some bad actors. And, it's just really protecting the safety of Americans.
Right, and if I just could kind of hone in on a specific part of this question, I don't feel like anybody is really arguing that border security is not important. But what we're really wanting to know is how you feel about the very crucial programs like education and Meals on Wheels being cut. Yes, border control is important, but is it more important than our education of our children and our well-being of citizens?
Of course it's important, and we vote for it in our appropriations bill, but we have a pretty, my generation is handing down to your generation a significant debt. Significant debt that if we don't fix that problem, just the interest on the debt will be insurmountable. If we don't reform entitlements, which is hard to do, then the federal government will just be an entitlement agency. And you look at the budget, the pie, and it's more and more mandatory spending and less discretionary, which is the national security staff. And if we don't reform these entitlement programs, it's going to take over the entire federal budget. They're unsustainable, and the debt and the deficit that we're handing down to your generation, just the interest alone will be. I don't think it's moral to hand that down to your generation, and yet we've allowed it to happen with no effort to bring it down. And so, I wish we could fund a lot of things, but like any household, we got to be responsible about your priorities and where you spend your money. So, I don't know. It'll be an interesting. We're looking at his budget. We're not going to rubber stamp that. We're going to put our own stamp on a budget as is appropriate by the Congress. Yeah.
You said we prioritize our funding, but don't you believe that education is a very high priority as it leads to the future? So how do you feel about that? And going on that, how do you feel about funding our education?
Yeah, I think STEM education is important. We don't have enough scientists and engineers in this country, so we have to import them. We have just a dearth of scientists and engineers trying to bring that. I think education really should be more of a state issue. And a state control issue, not a federal. I think the federal government should do what it's supposed to do under the Constitution and do it well. We can provide funding to help the states, but at the end of the day, we can block grant money to the states. But I think the more state control and state flexibility that you have over education. I think that's really, when I talk to the teachers, that's what they want. They don't want these federal mandates out of Washington telling them how to teach in the classroom. You know, the No Child Left Behind actually sounded like a pretty good idea, but then a lot of teachers didn't like the way it was implemented and the mandates that were put on them. So I like the idea of more state control and flexibility on education. But it's a hugely important issue. Without an educated population, we're nothing.
All right, well, that's unfortunately all the time that we have with the local congressman. Thank you so much for stopping by and participating in this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, but our forum is not over. We have lots of congressmen. We have an amazing group of specialists that we are going to talk about a variety of different issues like healthcare and how these lovely people can contribute to that. Okay, so
you got to say you don't get credit.
exactly, you're all captive audience. Okay, so first off, one of the issues that has come up a lot with the current political climate is the media, and there's been some attack towards the media, and so we wanted to get some of your opinions on how to filter through news and find reliable sources.
Starting with Lydia.
Starting with our professional.
Well, first of all, always read the Houston Chronicle. Which is my lawyer. No, it's a serious issue, and there's a lot of crap out there. I think that most of you guys are probably pretty sophisticated and can sort out truth from fiction, but it's not always easy. I think the best thing is just to think twice about the source that you're looking at and try to interrogate it a little bit. If you've never heard of it, delve into their website if they have a long history of articles or not. If you see things corroborated in other publications, there's very few news stories that someone has gotten so exclusively that nobody else has covered them. And if they're important enough, then other news organizations will follow and confirm it independently. So, Facebook is a great aggregator of news, but I don't think I have to tell you that not everything on there is real. And so pick people to follow who you trust. It's not always a verified check mark that guarantees accuracy, but that helps too if someone is employed by a reputable institution. And just, it's just critical thinking. But it's not to say that the mainstream media is the only good place to get your news, but maybe seek out alternative voices that you come to trust over a long time, and also just make sure to read things that you don't necessarily agree with, because that's a super valuable way to check your premises.
Thank you for that response, Lydia. One thing that I would add is check the citations. And so a lot of us probably read Wikipedia, and so you can scroll down, look at the citations, look at the sites as to which they're getting their information from, and that could be a great way to make sure that you're reading something that is accurate. Next thing I'll say is be aware of biases and recognize that with every news organization there is an inherent bias there, and so understand what that is. And so examine very ultra-conservative pieces that you're reading with liberal pieces, and then you can come to a better conclusion. That is sometimes a good way to examine your own beliefs and know what you truly believe. And I think there's so many people on the internet, like she said, that aggravate. They just are responding to things without even reading sometimes the actual article. They're just looking at the headlines, and that's what's called clickbait. And so people are reading stuff, just the headlines, and resharing it. And then it helps people, others, their friends, maybe they have 2,000 or 3,000 friends on Facebook, form impressions. And that's the problem, is people aren't reading. They're not doing their own investigation. In this time and age where we have news going up in 140 characters or less, people are not able to come to their own conclusions with the type of depth and knowledge that they should be learning. And it's not substantive. It's just very shallow, surface level stuff that they're resharing, and it's not something that they're doing a lot of digging and investigation.
Can you hear me? Hello? The only thing I'd add is absolutely check your sources. I'll give you this one anecdote. I remember reading about a study that was done that evaluated what news source did people use that were the most well-informed people on foreign affairs. And so it was very surprising that CNN was somewhere in the middle, and that at the very close to the bottom, it turns out that foreign affairs people that watched Fox News actually had a negative score. They knew less about foreign affairs than somebody who never watched any news because it was false news. But very surprisingly, at the top were the people that were the most informed. Their news outlet was the Daily Show, which kind of blows my mind, right? I don't even watch the Daily Show. This is just a study that was done by some academics. But I completely agree. Check your sources, and I'll just give you one of my main news sources is a periodical called The Week magazine, and what I really like about it is that it gives you snippets of the news. It comes out once a week and gives you snippets, and it tells you what the left is saying, what the right is saying, what editorials are saying, and then it gives you the sources, and all of that is in maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs. And then if it's a subject, and it's all across news, entertainment, science, the arts, and so if something interests you, then you can go verify the source. But I think the key point is diversify what your news outlets, listen to the left, listen to the right, look at some academic sources, but check the sources.
All right, so we're going to go over to our next topic, which has something to do with every single panelist. So we're going to address every panelist specifically, and then you each will have your own questions, so you don't have to respond to the first one. But since we were talking about media, Lydia, how do you think the media has been portraying healthcare, and what ways the coverage of healthcare could be improved so that everybody is more informed?
So healthcare is a super complicated issue, and I'm not a healthcare specialist, and I try my best to understand it. And so I think that because also the debate has been going on for so long, we passed Obamacare like 7 years ago, and since then there's been this iterative process of the exchanges being rolled out and it going into effect, and it's affecting a lot of people's lives differently. So it's both true that premiums have gone up a lot and made healthcare more expensive for some people, and also true that it has provided healthcare for people who never would have otherwise gotten it. So there's these negative and positive stories that are all in the mix, and people pick them up to make their arguments for or against the law. So I think the media can stand to do a little bit more just taking stock and saying, like, here's how we got where we are, just if you haven't been keeping track, because most people haven't. A lot of people in the media have, and we follow every blow by blow. So it's clear as to where we stand. I think folks who have other more important things to do in their lives don't always do that, and so there's just, I mean, we sometimes think, oh, you're not breaking any news, so why would you write that? Because it's necessary, because people need it, and it helps to understand how we got where we are and what are the stakes and what's going to happen next.
All right, and Dr. Guerrero, in regards to healthcare, what kind of reforms do the League of Women Voters believe that our healthcare system needs? What are the kind of things that they're doing and supporting in regards to healthcare?
So I'm also not a healthcare expert, but the League of Women Voters does have a stance, and the current healthcare act that's being proposed, the League of Women Voters is against it, just because it raises costs to millions of dollars to a whole lot of Americans, cuts coverage for women, increased costs for seniors, and takes away assistance for low-income folks. We actually have a full statement that you can read that discusses why we're against it.
Okay. And then Professor Collins, we were wondering what kind of reforms have some of the campaigns that you've worked for supported, and do you see any of them, coming into legislation anytime soon?
Well, so in my background, I'm not a healthcare expert, but can say that I can speak to the positions of the past candidates that I work for. That's easy. Working for Senator Ted Cruz on the pendulum of moderate to conservatism, he's very conservative, and he's advocated for a full repeal of the healthcare system and of Obamacare, the ACA. And so, now working for Congressman Kevin Brady, he's advocated for repeal and replace. And the differences in those ideas, and I'd say Senator Ted Cruz has been a little more quiet lately, but Rand Paul has really been speaking a lot on this issue, and he's probably the spokesperson on the far right. So, in his libertarian view, I would say that he believes that we should go all the way back to before Obamacare was in place. And now, whether that can actually happen, I'm not the best person to speak to that, but that is the view of the Freedom Caucus. And then there is another type of Republican, there's the Tuesday group, and they're seen as more moderate in the House. And so my boss's work as a leader in the House is to bring together different types of Republicans. He works to bring together the Tuesday group and the Freedom Caucus, which, like I said, is a pendulum of more moderate to very conservative. And so the way that he sees things is what's practical, what can actually get done. And the reason why Republicans, just in general, to talk about their similarities, I just contrasted the different types of Republicans, but to talk about their similarities, what they want is choice. They want to go back to a free market where there's opportunities to get the health care that you so choose. Because of Obamacare, you've seen that there's these Cadillac plans where people are having to purchase plans that are much bigger than what they need. There's much more, if you will, appliances on this Cadillac plan that they don't need. And so why does a woman in their 50s need prenatal care? They don't. And so, but they have to purchase it under Obamacare. And so there's a lot of problems that the right and many tax-paying Americans and hard-working people that don't get any form of government assistance, they've seen their premiums go up, and they're just frustrated. There's everyday hard-working people. These aren't right-wing religious zealots. They're just hard-working American people that have seen their premiums go up, and they're just frustrated. And they say, we're not getting any help. Obamacare has expanded health care and through these Medicaid expansions by 138% in some of these states, even in some red states. But unfortunately, for some of these more middle-class folks, they're not able to get help. And nobody's come to help them. And we've seen under Obamacare, when they've sought to expand, they've sought to expand people's opportunities, they've done just the opposite. And that's unfortunate for a lot of people because their premiums are going up. Their wealth is being redistributed to pay for people that can't afford it. But the people that have been hurt the most, I must stress this enough, it's people like my parents and your parents. They've been hurt the most because of Obamacare. And so it hasn't been the top 1% and these billionaires that have been hurt because of Obamacare. It's been middle-class, everyday people that are struggling just to make ends meet. And so that's what I'll say about that.
Okay, well, thank you. Okay, so now we're going to shift topics. We've had to rearrange a little, but so one of the other concerns that we got a lot of questions about was climate change and global warming. And so we were wondering, Professor Collins, have you, with your campaign work on the Republican side, have you seen any new legislation? Have you seen any sort of attention being paid to this? Any growing attention on the right?
We've seen Trump's executive orders. As a matter of fact, we've seen his orders because what he sought to do is help companies that have been overregulated get back to work, and they're helping bring back jobs to our country. They're bringing back fracking. They're working hard to bring back our economy, which has been in a death spiral. We haven't been where we could be, and so his whole mantra, whether you like it or not, or however you interpret it, many people interpret it in many different ways, but there are some that probably interpret "Make America Great Again" as let's get our economy moving again. Let's get America back to the very front. And we haven't been there a long time. We import more than we export. And so this idea of deregulating all of these environmental problems that have ensued because of deregulating these regulations that have really handicapped these major oil companies or so forth. So that's what he sought to do. Now it's up to you to determine whether that's right or wrong, but I'll tell you what his motive is. His motive is to bring people more opportunities, to bring back jobs, and to help people get back to work again. And of course, I can assume where where the opposition is and how they feel about it, but that's probably his motive.
Lydia, do you want to add?
Yeah, I'm just in terms of being aware of the sources of your information. You've heard a perspective that is very conservative here, so just be aware of that. There is an alternative perspective that perhaps Mr. Guerrero can lead out, but a few things. The natural gas industry in Texas, which you guys probably all follow, has not suffered because of regulation. It suffered because of the price of natural gas, which is a consequence of supply. So that is actually the thing that has driven the whole industry out of business over time. Natural gas industry is actually fairly okay with some of the Obama administration regulations that would have constrained carbon emissions because natural gas is a relatively clean fuel, and that has pushed a shift from coal to natural gas. Natural gas in Texas will not come back until the prices go up, and they have been lately, and there's been a recovery. But the idea that freeing the industry from regulation will do that is not true, according to most economists who are serious about this issue. We could talk more about healthcare and some of the perspective you heard a few minutes ago, but I'm not an expert on that. Just be aware that you all should seek out people who are in this, in any area.
So I completely agree with that. Let me just remind you that I'm an engineer. I work in oil and gas. I work specifically in liquefied natural gas. I read about my projects in the paper on a daily basis. And what I'll say is, one is, if you read about in the paper, Trump is sort of rolling back the Obama regulations on coal. That is not going to help the economy. It turns out there's more yoga teachers than coal employees. It turns out that there's twice the solar employees in this country than there are coal employees. So what you're doing is effectively, and a lot of these solar employees are here in the state of Texas. So it turns out what you're doing is you're not helping the economy, you're hurting the economy, and you are hurting the environment, right? And so, which I would say I'm not a fan of. The other thing I'll say is that climate change is real. You're not going to find any sort of any credible scientist in this world that's going to say that it's not real and that humans are contributing to the rise in this global temperature. And the last thing I'll say is, again, I work in the liquefied natural gas industry for a major oil company. And what I will tell you is that I absolutely believe that we can make massive profits in the oil and gas industry in an environmentally friendly way and in a sustainable way. So don't let anybody else tell you otherwise.
I'll just speak to one thing real quick. Well, with what Trump has done, the building of the Dakota and Keystone pipelines, that has nothing to do with what's going on with OPEC or overseas. That's something that can be done immediately to bring back jobs. And those are service jobs in the oil industry that can really help people. And so, furthermore, it makes us more energy independent. So definitely a good thing. And then I'll say that with climate change, that they've been saying different things for years, and they've renamed it, repackaged it. There was global cooling, then there was global warming, and then there's now climate change. And there are journalists that say these sort of things, and there are professors that work really hard to prove their point. Nevertheless, I don't think in many academic institutions you can have a differing opinion on this and be seen as credible. I don't think you can say that there is not, in fact, what's contrary to what they're saying. you wouldn't be able to and be seen as credible. And that's not fair, I would say. And you can't get published if you're a PhD at an institution. You can't get published unless you do believe in global warming. And so I think there should be a healthy debate there. I won't say whether there is or isn't. I'll just say that just because everybody says that there is doesn't mean that there is. You should be able to come to your own conclusion. You should be able to go back and look at the statistics and come to a decision. But just because everyone says that there is doesn't mean that's so. And so just because someone says, well, all of the experts agree, doesn't mean that's so. Just because somebody says, well, I'm an expert because I have this particular position, and so therefore I know, doesn't mean that's so.
Right, so it's just another way to encourage us to all investigate our sources. And there, are scientists, journalists, and a variety of different people that say that it is true, and some that say that it is not. But what I really wanted to kind of hone in on is the fact that you brought up that 50% of the workers were in the solar industry. So whenever we're defunding these environmental programs that are providing jobs, the big thing is saying that, oh, well, we're getting more jobs and we're putting coal miners back to work. But what about the environmental workers who are going to lose their jobs because their programs are being defunded?
Well, I would push back a little bit against the idea that solar and wind industry jobs are government funded, because they're not. They are private industry funded. In Texas, you've seen a huge surge in wind energy because it's profitable and competes with natural gas on price. And so those industries, and I've talked to those companies, there are solar and tax credits and other renewable energy incentives, more in other states than here, to be honest, that have helped encourage those industries grow. But they are going to continue to grow because there's socially conscious companies that want to buy that kind of power. There's socially conscious individuals who have products available to them that they can buy that kind of power through. So the idea that they don't survive without subsidies is false. And but they are perhaps more valuable kinds of power from an environmental perspective. But thankfully, they will continue to grow.
Okay, well, we received word that we have 30 more minutes in the room. If everyone's okay with that, does that work with everyone? So we can cover a few more topics.
Can we talk just a little bit more about this?
Yeah,
I'd have to leave in about 10 minutes.
Okay, that's fine.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. No, we understand. Sorry for telling you.
In 2009, Obama did his best to give opportunities to these types of companies that are so-called renewable energy companies. You look at solar and wind. The problem with that is that many of these companies, even with subsidies, went bankrupt. And so what happens when there's no wind or when there's no solar opportunity there? For whatever reason, these wind turbines are sometimes very ineffective. And so I'll just say that it's not always the best source of energy, and we should work to become more energy independent. We should look for other types of energy sources, but I'll say that that hasn't been the most effective.
Wouldn't it possibly be better if more? Wouldn't it possibly be better if the government was to encourage funding to go into more effective wind turbines to make renewable energy more effective, rather than to continue to rely on older forms of energy? Instead, just make new jobs by researching better turbines, better solar panels, finding better places to build these types of things.
So yeah, historically, the U.S. government, the Department of Energy, has put a lot of money into research and development for new kinds of energy and to increase the efficiency of not just renewables, but frankly oil and gas. It was a Department of Energy grant that helped encourage the development of fracking originally. So that is one of the programs that has been cut entirely from President Trump's proposed budget. I don't think that cut will be sustained because there are people on both sides of the aisle who understand the value of technology development that will help all kinds of companies. There's a lot of private R&D, but government subsidization of basic research has gotten us many of the things that we take for granted today.
to your question, I'll just say that's the equivalent of asking, well, if we have a more powerful engine in our car, can we go faster? Well, if you don't have any gas, you're not going to go any faster. And so if there's no wind, even if you have a better wind turbine, in my opinion, without wind, what do you have? You just have a big waste of money.
It's a good thing wind blows because the earth rotates.
It doesn't always blow.
It blows.
Not in every place. Not everywhere. You need it to blow continually for that to happen.
Right, and so I know you need to go, so I just wanted to give you an opportunity if there's anything you want to say before you go about what League of Women Voters are doing, or anything, any opportunities or events upcoming.
Or any last minute comments.
Any last minute.
Yeah, no, thank you for giving me an opportunity. One thing I want to say is, again, congratulations for being here. Just a little tidbit. So it turns out, if we just look at voter turnout, that I'm gonna use some value-based words here. So the worst voters in the country are Texas voters based on turnout, right? So, but it turns out that the worst Texas voters are the youth, right? And so the fact that you're here means that you're probably leaders in your own right, and you're going to be the future leaders of our country. And we need more people like you to be engaged. So thank you very much for being here and being engaged. You guys are doing an outstanding job here. So thank you. And the other thing I'll say is, so the League of Women Voters, I'm on the board of the Houston chapter. We're a nonprofit, so we don't support any party whatsoever or candidates. All we do is try to educate the community, and we do things like here in Houston we support citizenship, where new persons are becoming new citizens. We try to register them to vote. We also do what's called a voter's guide. So we'll send out questionnaires to each candidate that's running in November, for example, and each candidate will answer the exact same question, and you'll get to see the person running for mayor. Here's the two people running for mayor. Here's the question. Here's how they answered, and you decide how you're going to vote, right? And so we're absolutely education based. I encourage you to get involved civically, whether that's volunteering for an organization, volunteering for a campaign, volunteering for a nonprofit board. So keep up what you're doing. And so thank you for having me.
Thank you.
I mean, it's up to you guys if you want to.
I'm happy to stay for a few minutes if people want to.
Okay, yeah.
Do you want to go to prepared questions?
Well, I mean, I mentioned this whenever I first introduced myself, but there's like one of the big concerns of at least our generation apparently is the legalization of marijuana. So, so I had to at least try to address it. So,
I'll hear Lydia's response.
Well, we wanted to ask you specifically because of your economic background in journalism, and we wanted to know specifically, how do you think it would affect Texas if we were? How do you think it would affect Texas economically if we were to legalize it?
So I don't have a ton of studies at my fingertips to say what kind of effect it has on productivity, for example. But I do know that there's probably a lot of people in the state who use marijuana, and that if it were legal, it would be regulated and taxed like any other substance that people use that is already legal, like alcohol. So there are people on both sides of the aisle, obviously, who are fine with that, from those who would rather see less government intrusion in our lives, to those people who see its medical benefits. There's some interesting natural laboratory experiments going on right now in my home state of Washington, in Colorado. California basically just decriminalized. My old home, Washington, D.C., decriminalized. And so that is going to be really interesting to watch. I think it can be done without tremendous negative consequences. I think it would probably have an impact on crime enforcement if law enforcement officers were able to prioritize other more destructive kinds of drugs. Right now we have a lot of people in prison on minor drug charges, and that's both very expensive to the state and very hard on people's lives. So if that kind of thing were, if marijuana offenses were de-emphasized, I think that would probably be an improvement to the criminal justice system, and you may know that Texas has more people in prison than any other state. So that could have a host of different effects.
And then Professor Collins, for any,
My only position on it is that if every state is to decide their own fate, that would be a good thing. And so, I don't think, marijuana usage is a great idea, but I also don't think drug is either. So, in my opinion, I think that it should definitely be left up to the states to decide, and people should have the opportunity to make their own decisions about whether they will vote for such an idea or not. So, but it shouldn't be determined on the federal level that every state should legalize marijuana. That's for recreational use. Now, for medical, that's, I do sympathize with people that are going through things and they need to alleviate their pain, and that's something I probably, have not experienced. I don't know what they're going through, and maybe a veteran that is has a limb that's missing, and they use that. I don't know what people are going through. I don't know, if that's something that they think is positive for them. Then, who am I to say that?
Great. Well, thank you.
Just like really quick, did the campaigns that you're working for, do you know the stances for the ones that you have worked for and are working for, and just the likelihood of a kind of bill that would bring this up becoming something that's actually discussed in Texas?
I haven't heard much on it. I saw in the presidential, as far as actually passing the bill, but I saw, in the debates, as many of you saw, that they were asked that, and some of the candidates admitted that they had done marijuana before. And so Bill Clinton one time said, well, I didn't inhale, but he tried it. So, and I think Jeb Bush kind of was trying to get that same kind of laugh, but nobody laughed at him because they didn't think he was very funny. But, so I think he was trying to kind of pull a Bill Clinton and, be very relatable, because lots of people have tried marijuana. So, but really, as far as a bill, I haven't seen much, but I know that every state has to determine their own fate, and it looks like more and more states are going that way.
Okay, so another thing. Oh, did you have a question? Yeah.
I just had a question about kind of in general, and I think it's probably something most people in the country are feeling right now. How do you think we, I guess this can be directed to both of you, how do you think we as a country can move past this kind of intense partisanship that we're seeing right now? People have kind of drawn their lines and they're not looking at alternative sources of information or points of view.
You're basically trying to say it's too polarized?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was born in Norway, so I'm a dual citizen. My parents were missionaries there. And one thing I've learned is that in other countries, people can have a beer and have a disagreement and enjoy the conversation. But here in America, it's just so polarized, and sometimes people are so visceral to one another. And if you disagree with them, they take that as an attack against them. You disagree with someone's position about something, they take that very personally. And that's sometimes the problem, is that people can't agree to disagree and do it in a very polite way and just tend to love one another. So
I don't know if it's something inherent to American character, but I think that it probably has a lot to do with redistricting, because the way in which we've drawn our congressional districts over the past 10 years is such that, I don't know if you've ever seen a congressional district, but they look like octopuses, and that's because they're specifically configured such that you have Republicans in one and Democrats in another, and that creates people with very extreme views because those districts are very safe. So that's something that will be really examined following the 2020 census, and I hope in a positive direction.
And just to add on what you said, because I like your point, it's not something that just benefits Republicans, that benefits Democrats, because the Democrats were just in power. And so what that what she was probably alluding to is what that leads to is districts that are very extreme. You have very conservative districts, and so maybe a more moderate Republican is pulled to the right, and then you have a more moderate blue dog Democrat that has to be virtually, in some places, Bernie Sanders to win an election, or else they're going to be challenged from the left. And so they're having to gravitate toward the end of the pendulum, either far right or far left, to compete in some cases. And then once they get past the primary, they have to kind of come a little more toward the center if they have general election fund.
As far as the polarizing issue and everything, when you're saying, people can sit down and have a beer and disagree, when that you say people take it personally here as an attack and everything, not trying to start anything, but when that statement is between two people sitting down having a beer and the person says, I don't think you should be allowed to get married or something like that, or I think you should be forced out of the things such as that, they are personal. So in regards to that, what would you say? It's like, it's not like, oh, I think states should do weed, I think government should do it. Stuff like that. That's, financial, but we're talking social here. The social is, not socialism, social is common. Sorry. But, in regards to social, things like that, social matters.
Yeah. Well, there's crazies on both sides, and so what I'm speaking to is I had. That's not what I said. That's not what I said at all.
That's not what you said at all.
I know, she's right.
Yeah. Well, I really respect your opinion, and thank you for your question. So this is a really extreme case, but I do know of someone who's an acquaintance that was gay and a Trump supporter, and he was getting beat up in the gay community. And that sounds like a very extreme case, but I don't really know about all of his positions or if he looks for fights or pick fights, but I just saw the pictures. I don't know much more than that, but I did see the pictures of a gay Trump supporter getting beat up by other gay people because he was conservative. And so what I see is, but I'm sure there's an example where there's somebody on the right that beat up somebody on the left, and there's always that going on. And so you're seeing people that are getting in fights, and there's violence happening in the streets, and it's very nasty. And so that's what I was referring to. But I don't. I understand what you're trying to say. And I think we were speaking at each other, not to each other, but I was kind of speaking to something else. So
I also just want to step back for a second and say this isn't new. We've had very contentious debates about social issues for as long as America has been in existence, and people rioted in the streets, way more than they do now. So I don't get depressed by thinking that nobody can get along anymore, because we've not gotten along for a long time.
So regarding partisanship, and this is more directed towards the Brady campaign. Has Kevin Brady have any ideas on policies that might reduce partisanship in government in general?
Well, I think the way that the legislative branch was designed, it was supposed to be this system in which legislation that was passed is bipartisan. It's supposed to be that. It's supposed to be where you have Democrat input and Republican input, and so, determining which side is in power, they kind of throw the other side a bone to get something passed. But what we're seeing is that, you're having party line votes, and we saw that when Obamacare was passed, and it would virtually have to be that to repeal it, unfortunately. And so what I'm saying is I'm acknowledging that there isn't as much bipartisanship right now. I'm not seeing it either. I will say that there are things that Republicans and Democrats can agree upon, and there are Republicans that are against infrastructure bill that might be coming to pass, but there will be some Republicans that are for it. And so
Chuck Schumer said that he could work with President Trump on infrastructure because, I mean, who doesn't want better roads, right? So that's something maybe that they can agree on, even though, you know, the Democrats and Schumer they don't like Trump. At least they can agree on that, and that'll bring people jobs. Of course, there will be some conservatives that will be very against it, but there will be some Republicans that are for it. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. And I think if Trump is for it, and all the Democrats are for it, then it's something that's very likely that could happen.
Okay, well, thank you. Something that was brought up a little earlier was LGBT issues, and so one of the things that's a really hot topic right now is the bathroom bill. And so we were wondering specifically, what do you think Kevin Brady's campaign? How do you think it's towards this issue? How is he addressing it?
Well, this is a state level issue, and he deals primarily with federal issues, and so it's really something that's determined by state senators. And I can just tell you what I know about it, because it's not something that he deals with on the federal level. So what I know about it is there's been a bill passed in the state Senate, but it's gone to the state House, and nothing's happening with it. So like there are conservatives that are activists that are very upset by this because they feel like Speaker Strauss isn't doing anything to pass this bill, and so they're frustrated. And I don't know if Speaker Strauss is going to bring this issue to the forefront, but I've seen just in my county that there are a lot of people that are very for something being passed, and they just feel like, okay, the Senate's doing what we want them to do, but the House isn't doing anything. So right now, I don't know if anything's going to happen. So.
And then to carry on to that, Lydia, we were wondering, what do you think the economic, from your economic background, what do you think the economic effect would be were something like this to pass in Texas, especially with the aftermath of South Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen so far in the one state that has prohibited localities from protecting the rights of transgender people is that large events have taken their business elsewhere. And I can't cite you chapter and verse of them, but like large sporting events, primarily in conventions, because they don't want to be seen as anti-transgender rights. So the business community in Texas took a really strong stance against this bill, SB 6, because they knew that events like Super Bowl, Final Four, and major convention business, which Houston has been banking on, frankly, will likely not come. So that the economic effects would be in that realm, and I don't think you can see any positive economic effects from the bill passing. I just don't think there's any way you can analyze it in a positive way. So from that standpoint, that's where we kind of have you evaluate it.
Great, thank you. Do we have any more questions in the audience?
Yeah, I had a question more specifically for Christian Collins. In regards to violence, this past year, the nation struggled. I believe it's a federal issue with a lot of rioting, with minorities and whatnot being killed. So I guess I wanted to ask, has there been legislation or have there been, I guess, preventative measures to ensure that, number one, our cities are protected from those kind of circumstances, and number two, that the individual citizens are protected in the circumstance of possibly encountering police brutality?
Thank you for your question, Timon. Timon was a student of mine and a friend. Now to answer your question, I think that's really determined on the local level, or sometimes the county level. So the counties in states or cities like Baltimore, I've seen that they've been doing some things. It's not really determined on the federal level. But I have seen that counties and cities have worked to put cameras on the police officers so that they see later on what the officer was doing. And so if there is an issue, I think police cameras are helpful. But they don't just help the defendant, they help the police officer as well, because there are times that police officers are being attacked. And so having more visibility there not only helps the citizen, but perhaps it can help the police officer, so it's a win-win. So that's something that I have seen going on the local level. That's not something that's really pushed from the federal level, to my knowledge, but it is something that I'm seeing, so police cameras.
So policing is inherently local. All districts are run on the county basis or city basis, but the federal government has done a ton to encourage introspection in all of these localities. The Obama's Department of Justice and the Civil Rights Division had a pretty proactive approach to investigating police departments that have been shown to treat people unequally or pursue excessive use of force. And they've come to major settlements with cities like Chicago, Ferguson, Baltimore, saying you've been doing this wrong, and here's what you need to do to fix it. So that is also something that Attorney General Jeff Sessions has signaled he will retreat from in a major way. All of the settlements are under review, and so we may see very little encouragement from the federal government in the next 4 years for police departments to keep going with the progress that they have, in many instances, made in policing in a more sensitive way and being more receptive to the needs of the community.
And furthermore, I'll just say that there does need to be police reform. I saw a panel with Van Jones and Newt Gingrich, and they were talking together. And it was very civil, and you wouldn't think that. I don't know if you know who Van Jones or Newt Gingrich are. She does. But they were talking very civilly, and they came up with a lot of good ideas, and they were almost agreeing with one another. And so Van Jones was agreeing that we do need to protect our officers. And if you look at Deputy Goforth here in Houston that was slain, or if you look at the 5 slain officers in Dallas, they need protection. And just as well, there are people in the communities, in the inner cities, that need protection as well. And so that's what we need, is common sense reform. And unfortunately, in some of these inner cities like Chicago, there's just way too much violence, and it's a lot of it due to gangs, and it's really unfortunate. So they were just listening to one another and talking like civilized people. And I think that's what our country needs, is people that come together and find common sense solutions, and they take advice from people that are different than them, and vice versa. So.
Okay, so thank you so much. I think that just to put this out here, although the federal government isn't directly involved necessarily, although Lydia said that they can be involved, I just think that it would be a good time to urge Brady, because you represent him and you were his campaign manager, to maybe put this, not be afraid of legislation that would be able to encourage these kinds of conversations to be happening. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for having this wonderful conversation with us. And it's been an awesome way to really share political beliefs and have good old-fashioned civil discourse. And so it's very reassuring to know that's not dead.
Can I just say, Mary, Mickie, thank you for hosting this event, and thank you to Professor Hayward, everyone that helped put this together. It's a wonderful event, and I want to encourage all of you to get involved in the political process, whether you're Democrat or Republican. Get involved and speak up and learn the issues. And if you aren't sure about something, don't just stop at believing what your parents believe, or your best friend, or your girlfriend, or your boyfriend, but go a little further and find out what's the right issue by doing your own research. And be inquisitive and find answers. And if you're looking for opportunities, to get involved in the political process, well, there are internships here at LoneStar College that you can plug into and become civically engaged. And so I know that's something, just a little plug for that. I've been the beneficiary of Lone Star College's help, and that's not because Lone Star College endorses a Republican or a Democrat. It's just because there are a lot of Republicans in the area, and so inadvertently they help. I mean, they offer internships, and there are only Republicans to go to here in Syria. So, but just get involved in the political process, and if you are looking for an opportunity with maybe the Brady campaign, then please get involved, and maybe the Houston Chronicle has something that they can help you with. And, just get involved and care about the issues, and try to make your city and your state, your country a better place to live in. And I think you have that motive, and you will do well.
Lydia, if you have any
Journalism's a good career too. Despite what you may have heard about it dying. But no, I mean, I would just echo everything Ellen said. It's really fun. I'll be here. I have cards if anyone wants to talk about issues after them.